The Forbidden Planet. The HFY Science Council had catalogued thousands of worlds across the known galaxy, from the serene crystalline oceans of Draxus V to the molten hellscape of Vortuan Prime. Each world had been studied, measured, and classified according to the Galactic Hazard Index, a scale ranging from Class 1, perfectly habitable, to Class 12, entirely unlivable. But as the research vessel Zifrin 7 hovered over the unnamed blue and green planet that loomed below, every reading from their sensors told them the same thing. This was a Class 14 Deathworld, and yet it was full of life. Dr. Cyrixar, the lead scientist aboard the Zifrin 7, watched the holographic display with narrowed yellow eyes. He had spent his career studying the dangers of the universe, from rogue planets to unstable supernova. But nothing had prepared him for this. This planet, he muttered, his claws clicking against the console. It should be uninhabitable. The hologram rotated slowly, displaying vast continents, swirling storms, towering mountain ranges, and deep, endless oceans. It was a world of violence, shaped by unrelenting destruction. Cairo, his young assistant, swallowed hard as he read the data aloud. Extreme gravitational pull, twice the standard galactic norm. Unpredictable weather systems, hurricanes the size of continents. Tectonic instability, earthquakes and volcanic eruptions occurring daily. Native species are highly resilient to hostile conditions. Cyrixar's claws clenched. Highly resilient was an understatement. According to the bioscans, this world's dominant species had survived natural disasters that would have wiped out any other civilization before it even began. And yet, despite all of this, there were cities. There were spacecraft. There were intelligent beings living here. Cyrixar turned toward his communications officer. Transmit a standard first contact message. Let them know we are here. The officer nodded, sending a transmission in every known galactic language. A simple, universal greeting. This is the HFY Science Council. We seek peaceful contact. Identify yourselves. The bridge fell into silence. They had contacted dozens of species before. Some had responded with awe. Some with terror. Some had been too primitive to respond at all. But this time was different. This time, the response came immediately. A deep, confident voice echoed through the ship's speakers, perfectly translated into the HFY language. This is Earth. Welcome to our home. What took you so long? The HFY crew froze. They had expected fear, hesitation, confusion. But there was none. Cyrixar's blood ran cold. They were expecting us. The species that thrived in hell. The crew of the Zifrin 7 remained motionless, their eyes locked on the comms display. The response had come in under 0.2 seconds, faster than any species they had ever encountered. That shouldn't have been possible. Cairo's hands trembled as he analyzed the signal. Sir, their reply wasn't just fast. There was no processing delay. No hesitation, no lag. Cyrixar's mind raced. Even the most advanced species in the Galactic Concord took time to process transmissions. Even artificial intelligence systems required a brief moment to translate, analyze, and respond. But these beings, humans, they called themselves, had responded instantly, like they had done this before. Cyrixar pressed the console, transmitting his own voice. We are the HFY Science Council. We come in peace. Identify yourselves. The response came instantly. We are human. We live here. Cairo's breath hitched. Cyrixar narrowed his eyes. We wish to understand your species. How have you survived on such a dangerous world? For the first time, there was a pause. It lasted no more than 2 seconds, but it was there. Then the human voice returned. This time, it sounded amused. Survive. A soft chuckle. We don't just survive. We thrive. A chill ran down Cyrixar's spine. Thrive? Cairo's screen beeped. His voice was barely above a whisper. Sir, they're sending us data. A massive stream of information flooded the ship's computers. Images, history, scientific records. The Velari crew watched in horror as the files played across the holographic display. They saw tornadoes ripping through entire cities, only for those cities to be rebuilt in weeks. They saw earthquakes flattening civilizations, only for new ones to rise stronger than before. They saw plagues, wars, radiation, extinction-level events. Yet humans never died out. Where any other species would have been wiped from existence, humans adapted. They conquered. They overcame. A young scientist whispered, "They should be dead. 100 times over." Sirixer didn't respond. His mind was spinning. The final image appeared. A human standing on the moon, looking back at Earth. Beneath it was a message. This was just our first step. A realization struck Sirixer like a thunderbolt. The humans had already left their Deathworld. They were coming for the stars. A warning too late. The bridge was silent. No one spoke. Sirixer's claws trembled against the console. Every species the Velari had encountered before had a limit, a breaking point. But these humans, they had no limit. They had endured everything the universe could throw at them, and instead of breaking, they had grown stronger. Cairo's voice was barely audible. "Sir, if they've mastered space travel, why don't they have a galactic presence?" It was a valid question. If humans were this resilient, if they had already reached the stars, where was their empire? Sirixer was about to respond when ALARMS blared. "Incoming OGCTDTCTE." The crew spun toward the monitors. A small metallic object was rising from the planet. Fast. Straight for them. Cairo paled. "Sir, it's accelerating." Sirixer's heart pounded. Evasive maneuvers. Shields up. The Zifrin 7's engines roared as it lurched to the side. But the object didn't slow. It matched their movements perfectly. "Sir," Cairo gasped, It's scanning us." Then, the object stopped. For a long, terrifying moment, it hovered in front of their ship. Then, a new transmission came through. The same human voice. Calm. Amused. "We were wondering when you'd show up." The Velari crew froze. They knew. They had always known. And that was the moment Sirixer realized the truth. It wasn't humanity that should have feared the galaxy. It was the galaxy that should have feared humanity. The species that waited. The cold truth of first contact. The Velari Science Council had made first contact with dozens of civilizations, from the fragile insectoid empires of the Chiri to the warlike steel-bone titans of Korak-Tun. Every encounter followed the same predictable patterns: primitive awe, confusion, or outright fear. But this was different. This was wrong. Dr. Sirixer, the lead scientist of the Zifrin 7, stared at the floating probe just outside their ship, its sleek metallic frame eerily silent against the black void of space. A second ago, it had been moving, tracking their every maneuver, adjusting its velocity to match them with a precision that should not have been possible for a species bound to a Class 14 Deathworld. Then, as if satisfied, it had stopped. And the human transmission came through again, clear, deliberate, and filled with unsettling amusement. "We were wondering when you'd show up." The bridge of the Zifrin 7 fell into absolute silence. Sirixer's yellow eyes flickered to his communications officer, Cairo. The young scientist's hands were trembling over his console. "Sir," Cairo whispered, barely able to keep his voice steady. "They weren't just waiting for us." He swallowed. They were waiting for someone. Sirixer's mind raced. The humans had expected this. First contact wasn't supposed to happen like this. Transmit a response. Now. His voice came out harsher than he intended, but Cairo didn't hesitate. He sent out a transmission in flawless galactic standard. "This is Dr. Sirixer of the Velari Science Council. Identify yourself." The response came in immediately. "I already did. We are human. We live here." Sirixer's claws dug into the armrest of his chair. The way they said it, it wasn't a question or a plea for recognition. It was a fact. Humans weren't introducing themselves. They were simply reminding the Velari of what they should have already known. The realization sent a chill through him. The Velari had believed themselves to be the first ones observing humanity. But what if it was the other way around? The Deathworld that bred monsters. A new data packet arrived from the probe, flooding the Zifrin 7 systems. Cairo's eyes widened as the incoming files filled his screen. "Sir," he whispered, "they're sending us more information." "Put it on display," Sirixer ordered. The holographic interface flickered, and suddenly the history of Earth unfolded before them. The bridge crew watched in horror. They saw volcanic winters. The sky turned black by eruptions, so massive they had wiped out entire species. They saw meteors the size of cities smashing into the planet, setting the world ablaze, sending ash into the atmosphere for centuries. They saw ice ages when the world was trapped in an endless frost, freezing entire ecosystems into extinction. And through it all, humanity endured. Where lesser species would have perished, they adapted. They saw empires rise and fall. Wars fought with sticks and stones, then with swords and fire, then with machines and steel. They saw nations consume each other, their species warring against itself in conflicts that should have shattered them long ago. And yet, instead of being broken by the brutality of their existence, humans thrived in it. Cairo turned to Sirixer, his eyes filled with genuine terror. "They evolved through war," he whispered. "They evolved through extinction events." Sirixer couldn't speak. His throat was dry. Because he understood now. Humans weren't a species that survived their death world. They were a species that had been forged by it. And worse than that, they were looking for something greater. The Silent Empire. Cairo's console blared with a new alert. "Sir," he stammered, I don't understand." Sirixer turned toward the display. "What now?" Cairo's voice trembled. "The humans. They have no central galactic presence, no registered interstellar colonies, no recorded space empire." Sirixer narrowed his eyes. "That's impossible. If they've mastered space travel, there should be colonies, trade routes, something." Cairo shook his head. "Nothing. No fleets, no outposts, no homeworld beyond this one." Sirixer's claws tapped against the console as his mind raced. Humans were too advanced to still be confined to a single world, which meant one of two things. One, they had tried expanding before, and something had stopped them. Or worse, two, they never intended to expand in the first place. Instead, they had waited, watched the galaxy turn, studied its empires, learned its weaknesses. And now, after all these years, the Velari had just announced themselves to something that had never needed an empire to begin with, because the humans had been playing a different game all along. The probe's final message. The metallic probe outside the Zifrin 7 sent one final transmission. The human voice was calm, patient, like a teacher explaining something to a student who had finally started asking the right questions. "You think we should have expanded, that we should have carved out an empire, built fleets, taken territory." A pause. "But you assume we follow the same rules as the rest of you." Another pause. "We don't." The bridge crew remained frozen, their breathing shallow. The voice continued. "We are human. We don't expand until we are ready. And we never move until we know what we're moving toward." The weight of those words settled over them. Then, for the first time, the voice shifted. The amusement was gone. The calm, controlled confidence was replaced by something else. A warning. "You came here expecting something primitive, something manageable." Another pause. "You are wrong." The probe's transmission cut out. And at that exact moment, every single Earth-based satellite turned toward the Zifrin 7. They had been watching. They had always been watching. The choice. Sirixer stared at the darkened console, his mind spinning. This wasn't just first contact. This wasn't just a new species making itself known to the galaxy. This was a test, a message, a choice. The Velari could leave, go back to their homeworld, report what they had seen, try to ignore the truth that lurked beneath the surface of this Deathworld. Or they could stay. Ask the next question. Take the next step. But there was one terrifying truth that Sirixer could no longer deny. It wasn't humanity that should have feared the galaxy. It was the galaxy that should have feared humanity. And now, the Velari had to decide. Would they step forward? Or would they run before it was too late? The hunter's patience. The watchers in the dark. The Zifrin 7 drifted in orbit above Earth, its engines humming softly in the silence of space. Yet inside the ship, there was no silence. Dr. Sirixer stood frozen at his command console, his 4 yellow eyes locked onto the last transmission from the human probe. We don't expand until we are ready, and we never move until we know what we're moving toward. The words echoed in his mind. This was not the message of a primitive race. It was not the voice of explorers, nor was it the arrogance of an empire. It was something far, far more dangerous. The humans were waiting. Waiting for what? Sirixer swallowed hard. He had studied warlike species before, analyzed predatory civilizations that thrived on conquest. But this was different. This wasn't a race that charged blindly into battle, seeking glory. This was a hunter that never chased its prey until it was certain of the kill, and that, more than anything else, terrified him. A hidden empire. Sir, Cairo's voice shook as he stared at his display. We're receiving another transmission. The bridge fell into absolute silence. From the probe, Sirixer asked. Cairo's throat tightened. No, sir. This time, it's from the planet itself. Every eye on the bridge turned toward the massive blue-green world below. Cairo's claws trembled over the console. It's coming from multiple locations, simultaneously. Sirixer stiffened. How many locations? Cairo's eyes flicked across the data. Over 200,000. The bridge crew froze. That's impossible, Sirixer whispered. No species could synchronize communications at that level without a central hub. Cairo's hands shook. And that's just what we can detect. Their communication systems are so deeply embedded into the planet that it's like every device, every ship, every station is a part of the same massive network. Sirixer inhaled sharply. They don't have one central command. His voice turned hoarse. They have millions. The voice of humanity. The transmission finally came through. Unlike before, it wasn't a single voice. It was thousands, each one speaking the same words in unison. We see you. The bridge went cold. We have always seen you. Sirixer's blood turned to ice. Now the question is, what do you see? The transmission ended, and then every Velari sensor and scanning system shut down at once. The prey that became the predator. Sir, Cairo's voice cracked. We've lost all scans. Our external readings, our ship's eyes. They're gone. The bridge erupted into chaos. Is it a virus? A countermeasure? Are they hacking us? No. Cairo's voice was near panic. They're not disabling our systems. They're blinding us. Sirixer's heart pounded as realization slammed into him like a comet. Humans didn't just want to see their enemy. They wanted their enemy to know that they were being watched. And now, for the first time in his life, Sirixer knew what it felt like to be prey. The history that was never forgotten. The holographic display flickered back to life. New images began pouring in, not from the Velari sensors, but from Earth itself. Human history. But not the wars. Not the technology. Something else. The bridge crew watched as images of prehistoric Earth filled the air before them. They saw cave paintings depicting hunters surrounding prey, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. They saw ancient warriors in the snow, hiding for days, waiting, watching, as their enemy made the first mistake. They saw thousands of years of strategy, patience, and control. Then, the final image appeared. A tiger, frozen mid-leap, its jaws open wide. Its target? A human standing still, holding a spear aimed directly at its throat. And below the image, a single line of text appeared. Patience wins wars before they ever begin. The transmission ended. No threats. No declarations of war. Just a message. A warning. The hunter had become the hunted. Sirixar exhaled, his chest rising and falling. He understood now. The Velari had assumed humanity was a primitive species, struggling to survive on a hostile world. But the truth was something far worse. Humans weren't just survivors. They were patient. They had spent thousands of years learning how to watch, how to wait, how to strike at the precise moment their enemy least expected it. And now, the Velari had walked willingly into their sights. Sirixar turned to his crew, his voice grave. "We are leaving. Now." Cairo's eyes were wide. "But sir, we..." "Now," Sirixar barked. The Zifrin 7's engines roared to life. Escape was a lie. As the Velari ship turned away from Earth, a final message came through the comms. Soft, calm, unshakable. "Leaving already?" Sirixar's breath caught in his throat. "But we haven't even asked you the most important question." The crew froze. A pause. Then the voice returned. "Do you think you were the first?" The transmission cut. And in that moment, Sirixar knew the truth. Humanity had been found before. And yet, across the entire galaxy, across thousands of years of history, no one had ever spoken of them, because no one who had found them had ever returned.